Frank Skinner, a man best known for delivering punchlines on national TV, recently delivered something far more powerful than a joke. He delivered a wake-up call. The British comedian, famed for The Frank Skinner Show, found himself at the center of an uncomfortable, very real moment on set. It wasn't about ratings or reviews. It wasn't about scripts or sketches. It was about dignity, about doing the right thing when no one else would. And, ironically, it happened in a place where performing was quite literally the job. Skinner recounted the story in an interview years after the fact, not to boast, but to reflect on the kind of behavior that was too often dismissed as harmless or, worse, just a bit of fun. The incident? A camera operator decided it would be funny to tilt his camera under a female makeup artist's skirt during a recording session. This wasn't an accident. It was deliberate, a cheap stunt dressed up as comedy. To make things worse, people in the studio reportedly laughed. Because, of course, a woman's personal boundaries are apparently hilarious, right? Well, no, not to everyone. Frank wasn't present in the studio when it happened. He was elsewhere in the building, being, presumably, professional. But later, he found the woman crying in a side room. Not quietly upset, crying. Something that rarely happens unless someone feels truly humiliated or violated. When he asked what was wrong, she told him. And in that moment, Frank didn't write a skit. He didn't run it past his manager. He didn't weigh PR risks. He made a decision, clear and immediate. Either the cameraman leaves, or I do. I didn't go to the broadcaster, Frank later said. We dealt with it on the shop floor. And honestly, that might be the most Britishly heroic thing anyone could say. No fuss, no escalations, just a good old-fashioned moral ultimatum. The sort of thing you wish more people in power had the guts to do. Let's take a step back for a second. What makes this story matter? For starters, we're talking about the entertainment industry, an ecosystem where bad behavior has historically been tolerated under the banners of comedy, artistic freedom, or, let's be honest, he's too important to lose. The fact that someone with Frank Skinner's stature chose not only to take a stand but to do it quietly, without needing applause, speaks volumes. He wasn't trying to cancel anyone. He wasn't trying to prove himself virtuous. He was just protecting someone who had clearly been hurt, by a prank that wasn't a prank, by a joke that wasn't funny, by an audience that laughed when they should have spoken up. In his own words, Frank didn't want to get anyone sacked. That's not who he is. But sometimes, people do things that leave no other option. And here's where the chom beam knee, gentle satire, kicks in. What kind of man, working in professional television, thinks pointing a camera under someone's skirt is funny? Who looks at a piece of expensive broadcast equipment and thinks, you know what would be hilarious? It's not even creative misconduct. It's pathetic. And worse, it's predatory. Frank's strength in this story doesn't just come from firing someone. It comes from recognizing that his platform, his status as the star of the show, comes with responsibility. A makeup artist, no matter how talented, likely has little to no power on set. She's not the one with contracts or agent negotiations. She can't make someone disappear from the credits. But Frank? He can. And he did. And that's the heart of it. It wasn't about vengeance. It was about justice, small scale, immediate, and rare in its clarity. We live in a world where accountability is often a long, bureaucratic process, tangled in HR policies, legal reviews, and PR management. But sometimes, justice just needs a person in the room to say, this stops now. More importantly, Frank's story calls out the bystander problem, the silence in the room. Why didn't anyone else intervene? Why did people laugh instead of gasp? Why was no one willing to say, mate, that's not on? It's one thing to have bad actors. It's another when an entire culture enables them through nervous chuckles and awkward shrugs. Frank was baffled, rightfully so. I just don't understand why nobody stepped in, he said. He's not alone in asking that question. In fact, the world has been asking it a lot more lately. Across industries, across scandals, across continents. Why does it so often fall on the victim, or a rare ally, to do the heavy lifting? The answer is uncomfortable. Because stepping in takes effort. It requires risk. It might make you that person. But as Frank's story shows, being that person can also mean being the only person who does the right thing. There's a strange irony here, too. Frank Skinner built his career in the 1990s, an era not exactly known for progressive comedy. He himself has acknowledged that some of his old jokes wouldn't fly today. And that's what makes this all the more powerful. He changed. He evolved. He saw the shifting cultural tide not as a threat to comedy but as a necessary recalibration of decency. It's easy to cling to old norms and cry, censorship. It's harder, and braver, to admit, actually, we can do better. And Frank did better. He saw a situation that could have easily been dismissed with a joke, and instead, he made a stand. Not in a viral tweet. Not in a TED Talk. Just face to face, consequence to consequence, man to man. That's leadership. Not the hashtag kind. The real kind. Now, of course, this raises the bigger question. How many other people in media have let similar things slide? How many jokes go unchallenged? How many women, and men, too, get told to lighten up? Can't you take a joke? It was just a bit of fun? The phrase, just a joke, has covered a multitude of sins. It's the oldest trick in the book. Say something offensive, and when challenged, accuse your critic of lacking a sense of humor. But humor, like power, comes with responsibility. And if your idea of funny is secretly filming someone's private parts without consent, maybe you're not a comedian. Maybe you're just a creep with a camera. The best part of this story, though, isn't just the justice. It's the quiet grace with which Frank handled it. He didn't go on a media tour. He didn't brand himself a feminist hero. He waited years before even mentioning the story publicly. And when he did, it was framed not as an ego boost but as a comment on the broader culture of silence. That's rare, and frankly, refreshing. And here's something else worth appreciating. The woman in the story. Though we don't know her name, she had the courage to speak up. She told someone, and that someone listened. That in itself is powerful. Too often, victims stay silent because they believe no one will help, or worse, that they'll become the problem for pointing it out. In this case, she was heard. And protected. And that, too, is a kind of justice. So what can we take away from Frank Skinner's story? For one, that power is meaningless unless you use it to protect people who don't have it. For another, that the line between funny and humiliating isn't actually that hard to find, you just have to care enough to look. And most importantly, that being a good colleague doesn't require a grand gesture. Sometimes, it's as simple as saying, either he goes or I go. Comedy doesn't need cruelty, workplaces don't need silence, and leadership doesn't need applause to matter. Sometimes it just needs someone like Frank Skinner, standing in a hallway, looking a woman in the eye, and saying, quietly, firmly, this is not okay. And that, my friends, is the kind of story that actually is worth repeating.